afternoon, colleagues and honored guests. I even see some of our students here, so I'd like to extend a special welcome to the students from the faculty. Sciences Women's Month event. Today we gather to celebrate women, and we will do so by engaging with a theme that speaks to the very core of who we are. The women who make healthcare possible. Courage, leadership, and the choices that shape us. Over the next while, we will explore the real, unfiltered stories behind healthcare leadership, the accidental breakthroughs, the closed doors, and the authentic courage it takes to lead. We are privileged to have an incredible lineup today, featuring writer and journalist Vivian Vermaak, as well as distinguished leaders Prof. Fidoza Vahi, Prof. Mashiko Setshedi, and Prof. Joanne Passmore. A warm welcome to you. To set the stage and contextualize why Women's Day remains so vital in our field, it is my absolute pleasure to hand over to our facilitator and the Dean of the Faculty of Medicine and Health Sciences, Professor Elmi Miller.
Thanks, Florence. I've been in this position now for almost 5 years, and every year in the beginning of August, I think, I should have organized a Women's Day event. So this year, I was very organized, and when Florence and I met early in the year, we set out what we're going to do for the year, and one of the things we wanted to do was a Women's Day event, and I'm so happy that we managed to do it. And also then I got a request from the Stellenbosch campus, not the main campus, the Stellenbosch campus, to ask if we could stream this and make it available to them as well. So I'm very happy that there are some of them listening online. We've got a great crew here who's looking after this part of the event. I think women has shaped so many things, and it's not for me to tell you what women have done, because we're sitting here in an audience of women, and you know so many of your role models, so many of your family members, so many of your colleagues who were women, and what they've achieved and how they've moved forward. I think we also know that in our country's history, women has played such an important part of our journey, and this is part of what we are celebrating today, the historic things, the things that have shaped us, but also who we are as people and how we go into the future. And I hope with the speaker and the lineup of panelists that we will have opportunity to talk about that. Now, you know me, I always love a competition, and I've decided to have a competition today because I want to know if anybody can tell me who is Thierry from Minamu? Liesel?
Yeah, the bacteria.
Did you watch this?
Minamu.
All right, that's great, because Vivian was Thierry. And she says this is the character that she still thinks of as one of her favorite characters that she played. So Vivian is an award-winning journalist. She is an actor. She is a TV director. And she's also a public speaker. And besides Thierry, she was also the person who drove the program, the travel show, Going Nowhere Slowly. And I think many of you watched that. She has got this very old car that she's traveled through Africa with, and I think everybody loved that show, and maybe she will say something about that. But she's also now becoming a very fresh voice in public speaking in South Africa. She has done many major talks and is talking really on things that I think is close to us as women's heart. She talks about how we should be recognized as people in society, how we should be more confident and achieve more by being ourselves and not trying to reinvent ourselves in this world where we have so many ways of reinventing ourselves in social media, in so many places. And she's really talking about that authenticity. She's got a 1969 Chef Impala in the context of her show, and she's got a Jack Russell called Bonky. So it's wonderful to have you here, Viv. We're looking forward to your talk, and then after the talk, we're going to go into a panel discussion.
Thank you. When I was a little girl, I knew what I wanted to be when I grew up. All the other little girls wanted to be nurses and teachers, but I didn't want to be that. I wanted to be Tarzan's wife. Because I read the comics in the Sunday Times on the back pages every week, and it was so cool. Can you imagine being close to a person who has that command of the natural world that he could stand atop of it and go, ah, 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 and beat his chest in this magnificent, heroic gesture of victory. But as I grew a bit older, I realized that my dreams had to be more realistic. Because let's face it, that guy's never going to get married. Trying to be his wife is never going to work. So if you wanted that aha moment, you'd have to do it yourself. So I resolved I would be Tarzan. And the closest I ever came to being Tarzan was the time I climbed Kilimanjaro. And suffice it to say, it didn't quite work out like in the comic books. And I'm going to tell you the story today, and I'm going to tell it twice. Both versions of the story are true, but only one of them gets real about the journey and the way women have to make decisions when they compete in a man's world. And Prof. Elmi said to me, Vivian, you have to keep it real. And part of my message today is as we go through our journey, to be very cautious of the pictures we take of our achievements. Because that picture at the top is so beautiful. But it's one moment in a long line of events that's ephemeral, that's quick. It's just one snapshot. And before you get there, before you even get to the mountain, there's a lot of other stuff that happens. And after you leave the mountain, there's a lot of other stuff in the journey that's equally important. So pay attention. Now, a funny thing happened to me on the way to the mountain. Journeys of my life. And what is quite strange is that even though I traveled across Africa, I bungee jumped off Vic Falls, I climbed Kilimanjaro, I arm wrestled Maasai warriors barefoot, when people met me then and even now, they don't talk about my heroic achievements, they say, do you know what we like about you the most? It's that you're always yourself. No, but madam, who else would I be? So, if you're not yourself, who are you now? But this thing, to be as you are, not as you could or should be, is a very rare thing. And people are attracted to it. This concept of authenticity is very important to people, but they don't necessarily know how to get it. And I have so much of it. So that's what I share as a public speaker, how to get closer to be as you are. And not everybody appreciates it. But there are some people for who your non-heroic acts are more important. What people liked about me on the show was that I was kind to others. They called it magnanimity. I said, sorry, what does it mean? Okay, magnanimity is when you show generosity to others. So when there were newcomers, I would say to the guy, you take center stage, you take the spotlight. And not everyone does that. And not everyone liked it, by the way, on television. So we at the time, as this cult phenomenon, were competing against the magazine, the flashy shows like Top Billing with these massive budgets presented by celebrities, Miss South Africa's, and it's the makeup and the flash and the money. And here comes Poopie's from Mark from Germiston, doesn't comb her hair, barefoot, just saying what she sees about the world. And some people complained. So the SABC got letters from people saying, listen, we're not paying our TV license to look at ugly people on TV, so get rid of this woman. So now my producers are very shocked because they now have to fire me, even though I'm one of the most popular presenters. And they said, Vivian, this is very offensive. We're going to tell SABC that you can't say that to a woman because all women are beautiful in their own way. And we're going to argue that. And I said, whoa, 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 whoa. You're not arguing that. Not on my account. Guys, just listen here, listen here. If all women are beautiful, no women are beautiful. The word beautiful, and remember I'm a writer, is a word we use to describe a person that has an unusual quality of attractiveness. Look at me. I'm literally competing against Miss South Africa's. It's an unfair comparison. And another thing, those people are paying their TV licenses. I agree with them. Just on a free market system, you must pay for what you get, and if you don't want to see ugly people, you shouldn't get ugly people. But anyway, that's not the point. That's not the point. The point is not here whether women are beautiful or what anything about me. The show is popular because it's not perfect. For the first time you see on primetime television real people in a show that's unscripted, unplanned, sometimes you didn't get food for 2 days, and a real person. And for some people, that means something. The show doesn't work because it's perfect. It works because it's broken. That's the message you say to the SABC, and that's what you should argue for me to keep on being on the show. And they did. And I'm very grateful that I was allowed to continue to be on the show, obviously. And it was just after we scrambled up June 7 in Namibia that we got the news that Going Nowhere Slowly had overtaken Top Billing in the ratings for the first time. And this is an unusual story because what it says to us is that the paradox of the story is the thing that made me unusual on primetime television, the thing that made me apart and special was the fact that I was so average. That's the paradox. Because it's a sin to be average in today's world. It's absolutely a sin to be ordinary. You have to be special, you have to be excellent, you have to win, to be seen as anything. And that's completely the wrong attitude. So let's get real. Most of us, by definition of most of us, are pretty ordinary and average most of the time. So let's have the audacity to be ordinary and take the pressure off each other to be so unique and excellent all the time. Because it's untrue statistically, and I think it could have a damaging message. And to this tone, I'm going to say something, right? Because it's Women's Day, and I know we call each other goddesses and queens all the time. Goddesses and queens. If everyone's a goddess, nobody's a goddess, right? If everyone's a queen, who's going to do the work? That's what I'm asking you. But I understand we live in an era of pronouns, so if you are a goddess and a queen, I will address you as such. Just put it here on a label on your chest so I know who you are. And if you can start a numbering system so I don't get confused. Because can you imagine this situation, right? Sorry, goddess 1, 2, 3, just come down, please, because queen 4, 5, 6, she's excellent with a scalpel, but terrible with admin. And what about goddess 367? She can spot an accounting error from a 2-mile radius. But an oak walks through security with a balaclava. She can't read his body language. So everybody has their own separate skills. And most of the time, we are not goddesses or queens. And there's a time for us to be a goddess and a queen. And sometimes there's a time to be ordinary. But there's also a time to be Tarzan. Now, Kilimanjaro is a hell of a thing to climb. I'm not going to lie to you. It's a massive undertaking and definitely physically probably the most challenging thing I've ever undertaken. And it's a mountain. Mountains have this great myth and power and metaphor. It starts with Moses in the Bible all the way through. So we see any trip up a significant mountain as an important life event. We took a route that was 5 days up and 1 day down. So you go through the forest and you go up. And I was extremely fit at the time. I did martial arts. I was extremely fit. Doesn't help you. because of altitude. You can be as fit as you want. You can't breathe. So by day 2 or 3, and it was important for me to do well, because I'm on TV and I'm representing the women of the world, but you can't breathe. You can't breathe. So you end up for 2 days thinking, why am I doing this? What's in it for me? Why am I putting one foot in front of another? And that's what you end up doing for days at a time. When you concentrate, you have to will yourself to breathe. What am I doing it? Or am I giving up? I want to give up because so many times in my life, I've given up when it gets too hard. So it becomes suddenly, when you're faced with mortality and potential mortality, it's not about the mountain anymore, it's about the story of your life. And on the 4th night, we were sleeping and we heard these very urgent noises outside. And we looked out, they were carrying a body from the top. Somebody had died on the previous summit attempt. They stagger you, so every day there's a new group that goes to the summit. Somebody had died, a man had died. I said, oh my God, this is serious. On day 5, one of our crew members collapsed. They had to give him emergency oxygen. And all of these culminate on the morning of the summer day. And they build it up into this dramatic, climate, this last stretch up to that famous board of Kilimanjaro at the top of Africa. And you see this thing, and they do it on purpose, that you don't see the summit the previous days because otherwise people would turn around and go back. So you only see this mountain for the first time after 5 days, and it's so far and it's so difficult. And then the sun rises, and you're sitting almost on top of Africa, and you see that thing come across the continent in its golden glow. There's Mount Mira to your left, and you're literally watching the sun rise over the world, and the hair goes up on the back of your hand, and it's magnificent, and it's life-affirming, and you decide, I'm not going to give up. I am going to make it to the end, and that was my decision. And I got up, and not only did I make it to the end, I ran to the summit. So I went from almost giving up to running to the summit, being the first person in my team. Applaud? Come on, tough crowd. Now, if I was a motivational speaker, that's the story I would give you. It's true, it's 100% true. Everything I told you is 100% true. But it's not the real story. Because as I warned you, mountains are almost never about the mountain. There's a lot of other stuff. So the real story, and everything I said, 100% true. Behind the scenes, there was some tension between the men and the women on the team. I was the only woman. Okay. So they have this thing. Vivian, do you want to climb the mountain? Yes, of course I want to climb the mountain. Okay, but it's not a competition, okay? Why not? Okay, it's not a competition. No, we're just checking. We know what you like. I said, okay, it's not a competition. We're going to all go to the summit together, right? Kumbaya, my brother. Is that the senior? Fine. No, we'll summit together. Yeah, well, that was the plan. And it was so important for me to do well. Because I'm the only woman, and because from my background, the people who remember Minamu, that era of the Afrikaans patriarchy, where men were everything, especially if they were soldiers, and women were nothing. So I'm not only climbing this mountain as a woman, I'm climbing it as a vermaak, with brothers who all got honoris cruxes and were in the special forces, and your value in the world is to be a soldier and strong and die for what you believe in. So now here I'm sitting, I don't know what I'm doing, I have to give up after day 2 or 3 because I can't breathe. And is this an important enough thing about my self-image to climb this thing? And all of these things go through your head. And when you do something that carries mortal risk, I promise you, your story will become that small and that focused. And on day 5, and the people are dying and all that stuff and oxygen, but you have to push through because you're a vermaak. And you're the only woman in the team. And the sun rises over Africa. And here's this plan that we must all summit together. And I see this one oak sneaking away. And he goes to the summit without us. And I'm going, excuse me, let me just understand this. Can I understand this correctly? So this is not a competition, okay? It's not a competition. You just want to be first. Okay, you just want to be first and I mustn't. Is that the way it works? And you know the situation, ladies, with men. It's not a competition. They must just win. And where we always have these difficult choices to make. Because it is difficult. Because for every time you win, someone else has to lose. And we never talk about that. And I have my own story because I want to win, but so does he. And he has a good story. God damn it, he had a good story. He had ancestors, and he had to be the man in his family and do right by his father. And I'm watching this guy, and I can see his dream is there, and maybe that's my role in his story, to be the one that steps back. To be the one that allows his dream to come true. Because he looks so beautiful. And the golden glow on his face, and I thought, fuck you. If this is a competition, I'm in. And I start running. Now, running is a strong word for what happens on Kilimanjaro, right? Because no oxygen. So it's not running, it's like you're on the moon. So it's like, you should have seen the look on his face as I came past. And he was like, oh. And I'm like, ah. And our packet of Zap signs with our patriarchy as well, you bastard. But you can't run. So your dream there in the background is coming closer. But you feel like you literally die. You can feel your heart pounding in your chest and you can't breathe. And I just I promise you, if that summit was 10 seconds further, I would have died. And you stumble up and eventually you're at the top and you've made it. And it's like, But you did it, but it didn't go the way you planned. But that's the real story. And that's the story public speakers never tell you, because we get the versions of it that are shoehorned and they're beautiful and they're perfect, but they almost never are. So I'm going to give you some perspectives on this thing, some other perspectives on the story. So let's look at this, and that's the picture they published, by the way, all of us together at the end. Okay, so kumbaya. So let us look at another perspectives of the story and the way we tell stories in our lives. That the difference between the two newspaper headlines was just 10 seconds different, right? The difference between woman goes from almost giving up to running to the top and coming first in a team, 10 seconds difference to stupid idiot runs itself to death on top of a mountain. So these stories about our end points, be very cautious that we only pick the heroic moments, and that's the one you put in the photo album, when all the other moments are equally true. So this is what I'm bringing to the field of public speaking, to interrogate the way we tell stories and just think about them a bit more carefully. What is the story? The man who died, what is the story his family is going to tell about him? Does the wife go, children, your father died on the mountain, but he died a year ago? Is that the story? She probably told him before he went, please, for God's sake, I don't know why you want to climb the mountain. You don't have to prove anything to us, just be here. What if, in that man's story, he wanted his Tarzan moment? That was his whole life because he was going to prove something to himself. What if he died on the way up the mountain, not the way down? Does that mean his whole life is now nothing? So we have to start interrogating these type of things. And I don't want to take anything away from anyone who climbs Kilimanjaro, especially not me, obviously. But 30,000 people climb the thing each year. So if the compulsion and the urge, and I know we have it, is to be special and unique, is it so special and unique? And I can't give you answers. I can't tell you that you must do it or you mustn't do it. I can't tell you that you must run or you mustn't run, because you might die, but you might not. I can't give you that advice. I'm a philosopher, guys. I don't solve problems, I just describe them. Okay. So life is much more complicated than anything I'm saying here, and the best I can do is show you how to sit with that complexity in curiosity, authenticity, and a sense of humor. So after I came back, now of course you're bragging, you have great stories of Tarzan on the mountain, everybody wants to listen, and I'm commissioned by a magazine to write the story of my mountain, and I include two other people because I'm a curious person, I'm a journalist, and I speak to a mountaineer and I speak to a geologist. And I'm speaking to the mountaineer, obviously. No, I'm the great hero, just returned from Kilimanjaro, and I ran to the summit. I said to him, he says, okay, that's nice. How long did you take? I said, 6 days. 5 days up, 1 day down. And he says, no, he's also done Kilimanjaro. I said, that's nice. How long did you take? 8 hours. Excuse me? 8 hours. They run it up and down in one day as exercise for real mountains. He says, so I'm going, probably a bit unnecessary. What a show off. So whenever we think we're doing something great and special compared to other people, it's not so great. Doesn't mean your story isn't special, but if the compulsion is to be unique and special, you're going to have a tough job ever living up to that. Then I spoke to the geologist and I said to him, yes, I just met this guy. Can you believe it? They climb all these mountains and he went up and down Kilimanjaro in 8 hours. Isn't that incredible? And the geologist said, no, not really. I don't find that incredible at all. I don't understand why you guys want to get to the top of the mountain. And I say, yes, because we can. Look at you. And I must tell you what this geologist looked like. He's a toppie with a boop. He was grey, and he had a little polystyrene cooler box, and he had castle lights in them. 10 o'clock in the morning. I said, yes, well, of course you can't understand why we want to get to the top, because you can't. He says, no, it's not that. If I had the gift of spending 5 hours on the slopes of Kilimanjaro, I would spend them at the bottom because the stones are so much better there. And he picks up a stone, and at the time, the interview I did for the Franschhoek magazine, so it's in our area, he takes me on this journey in deep time. And he tells me how the mountains of the Cape Fold Belt, which we are all in now, by the way, how they were formed. And as he speaks, the hair on the back of your arm rises up because you understood what just happened over the course of 350 million years, how first everything got forged together, and it's the sandstone and the Cape Town and the clay and the granite. And then 180 million years, if you were standing where we are now, the continents would be splitting. Do you understand what I'm saying? That to your left, you would see South America splitting off. To the right, you would see Madagascar splitting off. The sky above us is warm and full of CO2, and there's molten lava being spewed all about up. And then millions of years later, this is where we are. And he made me, in an instant, zoom out to the edge of the universe into a place where I did not exist at all. And then you look up and you also realize at the same time you are nothing. But you are also the most important thing in your own life at the same time. And that's a picture you take from the mountain when you realize that maybe the most important observation or lesson from the mountain is given to you by a person who didn't climb it at all. So there I show you now the caution to not only limit the mountain to a place where you are standing victorious or even at the top. Zoom out, zoom in, click, take pictures of all of it because all of them are equally important. So when I work with people and I do workshops or mentorships, we do an exercise where you start with a blank slate and you fill the journey in. Even you can go back in history and fill it in. Wait a minute, the thing that I thought was important, maybe it wasn't so important. And absolutely, you take a picture of yourself standing victorious wherever you are going, or whatever your creator is, put that picture in. It counts, but it's not the only picture. Also take a picture of that moment where you confuse ambition, self-actualization with a moment of a need for retribution, vengeance, and an insecurity in yourself that now suddenly gets healed by this thing. These moments count. They're not bad, they count. And that moment where me and that guy looked at each other with this look, and both of us had it, where it's me or you, and it's self-interest and it's vicious, take a picture of that too, because it's real. And him and me saw each other in each other's eyes that day, something nobody else will ever see and probably will not talk about, but it counts. You take a picture of the outside and of the inside. Take pictures of people who teach you things. Take pictures of the world at the edge looking in. Take pictures of all of them. All of them count equally. And eventually a picture of yourself will emerge, but you'll see it completely differently. So that is my message here today, to take different pictures of your journeys, and they all count. Not just a moment where you are a goddess or a queen, which sometimes happens, but it's fantastic, but that might not be the most important contribution you make to the people around you. Stellenbosch University, already in the mountains we just spoke about, with its own extraordinary history, where just a mere 200 million years ago, the mountains forged into something that spat out Table Mountain after a while. Stellenbosch University itself was forged by these extraordinary forces of history and culture and wars and colonizations. And then apartheid split them apart, and then liberation brought them back together again. And here we are. A place with 10 campuses and 36,000 students, and none of them have a chance unless all of you show up every day as you are. As you are, you're making this happen. Not as you could or should be. So spare a moment and look at the people who are sharing your journey with you, who witness you in this extraordinary journey that could deliver both Hendrik Verwoerd and Naledi Pandor, which is quite remarkable if you think about it. So that is my message today, Prof. Elmi, to keep it real and to take more pictures of our journeys that show us weak and vulnerable. And people tell me, Vivian, you can't tell people the second part of your mountain story because it shows you weak, vulnerable, and with chips on your shoulders. So, well, it's my chips and my shoulders. I can do with them what I want. I think it helps people if you tell more authentic stories. So I'm going to finish off this talk by taking 2 pictures. The one is of me, obviously, because you must. And please look like you're interested. But the final one, let me see if I did it properly. Oh my goodness, you're on there. Nice gorilla, look there. But the final one is the picture of you, ladies, and I'll send it to Prof. Elmi, right? So this video, I want to say to the women of Stellenbosch. I want you to stand tall and proud when you tell your stories. Sometimes you'll be a goddess, sometimes you'll be a queen. Most of the time you'll be ordinary. But tell your stories real and tell it true, even though they might be magnificently messy, disastrously dirty, and have tricky trade-offs in the middle. And let us witness each other in authenticity or compassion and a sense of humor. And let us move forward together.
Thanks, Viv. That was so good for us to hear. And I'm sure you've spoken to many people right from the heart and just from the place where we really need to connect with you. And I think we're going to set a lovely tone for the panel discussion, which we're going to go into now. But keep your mic, because at the end we're going to have an opportunity for the audience to ask a few questions. And maybe there would be 1 or 2 that will be directed at you. So it's a great pleasure for me to introduce our panelists. The first person is Professor Mashiko Setshedi. She's a clinician scientist. She works at Groote Schuur Hospital. I've known her for many years. She has been the head of gastroenterology and now has moved on to become the head of general medicine there, and has, I think, a very important leadership position today on the clinical side at the UCT campus. And I thought in the idea that we share a space here in the Western Cape, it would be nice to introduce her as somebody from UCT. So welcome, Mashiko. The second person is Professor Joanne Passmore. She works on the scientific side. She's an immunologist who has worked in the field of HIV and human papillomavirus. And she's joined us recently as a joint collective between the Faculty of Medicine and Health Scientists and SERI. And is now playing a very important role in the establishment and forward-looking place for the BMRI. And then the third person I think needs no introduction in our audience, Professor Firdausa Waghi. She is the executive head of health professions education in our faculty. And I have to say she's played a very big role in bringing people together in her own environment. But she's also an incredibly supportive leader in the faculty and has been really make a big difference to me as a person in terms of reaching out, being always available and always reflecting, I think, with so much kindness and so much insight into events and into things. So thank you so much for the 3 of you to join me. please come and sit in the front, and I'm going to ask you a few questions. And then if you can think of anything you want to ask, we are going to give opportunity for you also to ask some questions from the audience floor. So we're going to start by talking about our journeys, and I'm going to ask each one of you to give me a short answer for questions which I hope will be a little bit provocative and interesting to you. So my first question is to you, Ferdoza. When you were 10, what did you want to be then? And what do you think your 10-year-old self would think about who you are today?
Okay. Thank you so much, and thank you for inviting me to this discussion. Yeah, 10 years old. Okay, so it was a difficult time to grow up for me. It was a difficult era, I think. Being in growing up in those years. But I think, also like Vivian, I think I didn't have the ambition to be a Tarzan's wife or anything. For me, it was wanting to be the teacher, because my mom became a madrasa teacher, but also a teacher. I wanted to be a doctor. I wanted to be a dressmaker because my aunt, she was a very good dressmaker. So that was my ambition, I think, at that time, growing up. Like I said, very difficult circumstances. My mom's family having to be removed from District 6. It was a very painful period, but for me also, still, I was very lucky in the fact that my dad was also very progressively minded, coming out of a very conservative Muslim upbringing. My father actually wanted all his daughters to go and study. So he had this vision, we shouldn't just get married, but he wanted us to study. So I think, looking back, I think that that 10-year-old would have been very proud of me today. I don't think that I had any idea that I would actually become the executive head of the Department of Health Professions Education, or that I would become a physiotherapist and really going through higher education. But I do think also, in thinking back, I think she would be very proud in the way I've had a very strong sense of wanting to help others and wanting, that teacher, that wanting to learn and to help others along the way. I think she'd have been very proud of me. And I think where I am today, I don't think that I had any idea that I would actually land up where I am. But I'm very, very grateful for the opportunities that came my way. Sometimes I didn't make those decisions. Sometimes I just found myself in these situations. But I think she'd be very proud of me where I am and the decisions that I've made. Thank you, Almi, for that question.
That's a wonderful answer. So we all have doors that closes on us, things that we wanted to pursue and then it just doesn't work out. Is there anything, Mashiko, you can tell us about this, a door that maybe closed on you and where you ended up instead?
So I also want to thank you for inviting me to this conversation. Sometimes in my past I worried about having conversations with women because it sounds exclusive. But I actually think it is important because there's so many things that we share, so much that we can learn from. So doors closing. I actually can think of a door that I closed. So I know your question is more about doors that closed, that it wasn't really your decision. But I think it's probably also equally important to think about the doors that you might have to close at a particular time in your career or your life for whatever reasons. So in this instance, I was head of gastro at UCT Grooteskier, and I think I was only 2 or 3 years into my tenure. And the position of the second chair of medicine, so that would be my deputy currently, opened up. And for whatever reason, I was unsettled and I thought I want to apply for this job. I think it will be better for me. There's also the idea of always moving to the next post and the next thing. And I considered applying for quite a while. And at some point, I suppose I realized that actually this is not the right time to apply for that particular job. Let me stay put in my current job. Let me learn what I need to learn from it. Let me improve as a leader and so forth and so forth. So let me close that door on that particular post. And I think the lessons I learned in making that decision by myself was that it's okay to not step up. If it's not the right time and it's not the right thing for you to do, it doesn't mean you're a failure. It's also okay to be where you are and still continue to contribute. And it's not about positions. And sometimes I think in medicine and healthcare, and maybe all professions, we get stuck with the next post, the next post, the next post, without stopping and asking, well, what are you going to contribute?
Yeah.
It's not just about the jobs or the titles or the positions. What do you hope to contribute? So that was a lesson for me with regard to me deciding to close that particular door. Yeah.
Thanks. I think that's also connecting very well with what Viv told us. Joanne, you've got many things on your CV. Have you got anything on your CV that looks really impressive but has a messy story behind it?
So, I really, I've got quite a few things. And I had to cherry pick the one that I thought can give the strongest message here. And we, since 2010, have been trying to understand HIV risk in women, and we've been identifying biomarkers that women have in their genital tracts that could signal that they're at increased risk. And we published that, and it's my most cited paper. I'm terribly proud of that work. And at that time, some person out of the blue sent me an email. He was from Trinity College, and he said, oh, he's at FIGO in Cape Town. Will I meet him for lunch at one of the sessions? Which I wasn't attending FIGO. I should have been, but I wasn't attending it. And I thought it was a bit odd, and I said, sure, I'll come meet you. And I Googled the guy. I hadn't actually met him before. And he was a really impressive person in his own right. And he had been in Trinity's got a very nice model. And he talked me at this lunch thing through, having these Horizon 2020 grants and how you've got to bring people with different mindsets into the same equation. You have scientists, you have clinicians, and you have industry, and how magical that can be to kind of accelerate translation of biomarkers into actual products that people can use. And I was like, oh, so we don't just publish and hope somebody else takes up our biomarkers, but you guide it through the pathway. And at that time, our SAMRC had a strategic health innovation platform. It was the first one that I'd seen. And I was like, I do a lot of stuff flying by the seat of my pants, because there was this opportunity and I've just had this brilliant idea and advice from this guy. And I had a very talented PhD student at the time, and really biomarkers we truly believed in, and we put in an application for the genital inflammation test to make this point of care device. And the reason I'm telling you this whole story is that we've now got a patent out of that. So on my CV it looks very impressive that we've got a patent. It's the only device like that in the whole world if we did a competitor analysis. And it actually exists now, the little cartridge with the little lateral flow device with our biomarkers, and I'm terribly proud of that. And it does look very impressive that we've got this translational device that has the potential to have a real impact. It looks very impressive, and it is probably one of the most important things I've done. And it was a chance meeting, and some kind person who reached out to me because he was at FIGO, and it's one of those truly transformative journeys. So that stood out to me.
So many things happen by these type of ways, coincidence, who you meet, where you are. It's interesting. I think we all have stories like that in our career. So we're going to talk about a few things that I think people don't always talk about, and we're on the topic of CV. So for those, is there anything on your CV that looks deliberate but was actually an accident?
Oh my word, there are two things. There are two incidents, but so maybe I must talk about the one thing that really that was a more recent one. Well, not too recent. That was when I was nominated to be the deputy dean for the faculty for Faculty of Community and Health Sciences, and this was completely. I mean, I didn't see that coming. I was on sabbatical. I then just got a an email by the faculty manager, you've been nominated by a few people from, not even from my discipline. And I was, whoa, really? Do people really think that of me? That was completely, that was not, I didn't see that thing, that was not in the plan. So that was the one thing. The other thing was when the dean at the time is now retired, Professor Pretorius. I was a physiotherapist, I was a lecturer in physiotherapy, and he came to knock on my door. And I thought, what is the dean coming to do at my office door? And I opened the door and he was standing, and I really got a shock, and I thought, oh my word, did I do something wrong? And he said to me, no man, I would like you to coordinate this big curriculum change that we're doing in the faculty, and we think that you should be able to do that. That was completely, really, I was going to be a physiotherapy lecturer, I was going to become a senior lecturer, I was going to become a professor in physiotherapy, and that's how I thought my journey was going to be in academia. The one thing that was the beginning of a real, put me on a different trajectory. It took me out of physiotherapy and it took me into a space that was in a faculty, completely unprepared. So the one thing that I think that I learned, the lesson that I learned about this whole thing was that careers are not linear. The way when we come into a profession, we think it's going to, this is what there are just things that take you in different directions. People might say, you know what, I think that you will be a good, like in his case, I think you'll be a good coordinator. And I think you'll be a good vice dean or deputy dean. You didn't plan for it, but these things happen. So whilst it looked impressive on my CV, Almi, it really wasn't in my plan going forward.
When you were the vice dean of UWC, and that's before you came here, and I saw you. I thought that you were going to be, staying there and become the dean, and we were so delighted when you joined us. Mashiku, is there anything you can tell us about the risk that you've taken in your career and whether it was worth it?
So my current role as HOD of medicine at Grooteskier, it's a massive role. And our predecessors, so the predecessors in this role are, they're very well-known people, high academic achievers. So for me, also not thinking myself quite in that light, having been approached to apply when it's something that was not anywhere in my radar, I really had to think about that. And it actually took me about 4 months actively thinking about this. Is this the right thing for me? Is this the right time? Can I do it? How would I compete with my predecessors? What will I contribute? Is this what I even want? And then the profile of the job, it's massive. And I never wanted to be in the space where it's so front-facing, it's so public, and obviously the fear of being judged, the fear of doing a good job, all those expectations that come with the role. So for me, it was a huge risk, and it felt like a life and death situation because you can't fail. At least that's what I thought about. That's how I thought about it. And if you were to fail, you'll fail publicly and massively. So you put yourself out there, you put yourself under scrutiny. People judge you based on how you're performing and what your predecessors did and how so-and-so is performing and whether you're the right candidate and do you have the right profile, etc., So it felt like it was transformative for me, finally overcoming my insecurities. And also just finally, I think what Lynch did, what actually made me finally do it, was I finally found the alignment between what I thought I could contribute and what the role requires. And I think once I sorted that out, I could let go of the rest of the noise. But it definitely felt like a step up in ever so many ways. Even now, I'm not on social media. And because I prefer to be a private person, just doing my thing. But, people are saying, but this is about the job and what it does. So the public face of it is something that I struggled with and probably still continue to struggle with. So it still feels like a risk. But I'm happy I've taken it.
That's great. So we all have to change sometimes things we believe in. And I was wondering, Joanne, if you have anything that you believed when you started in healthcare that you had to sort of radically change or that turned out to be something wrong?
So maybe because I'm a scientist, we sort of trained to question everything and be unsure about everything. And there've been quite a few incidents that you think the textbook has all the answers. How can you question the textbook, but then you meet somebody at a conference who's completely rethought something you thought was just like the holy grail of the field. But I think the thing that, I believed when I had a bit of a weird journey in my career, because I started research when there wasn't a papillomavirus vaccine and people were dying of cervical cancer. So I've been very fortunate to ride the rollout of this very effective vaccine and see countries that have now got 0 cases of cervical cancer. I started my career at the beginning of 2000s when there wasn't a good antiretroviral program and you couldn't really do anything for HIV infected people, and during the 2000s there was massive ramp up in access to antiretrovirals. So those are two things that you can't see, but it completely changes the trajectory of how you think about a problem or like a disease model. And those are very close examples to me. And for the first 10 years of my life, I focused on pathogenesis and how you understand you could slow down disease progression in women who are infected. But actually, in 2010, having microbicides and pre-exposure prophylaxis completely changed my vision of it is about making a woman living with HIV live the best life, the healthiest life they can, but it's actually about protecting those women who haven't been infected yet, and that has been the focus for the last 16 years. So that's not a direct answer, but it is.
But it does shape how we think about things, because we sometimes think this is a real problem and then the world around us change. And I think we're all facing that with the way the world is changing, that we have to reshape what we do is in our professional lives and maybe also in our personal lives, where we have to just reinvent who we are, what we do, because the things around us change, and that's something we have to deal with as women and as human beings. So I think I want to just open up the discussion with the three of you, because one of the things that I always find difficult is that people see a leadership role as something that you will get when you're 55 or 60. You're going to move up, and then you're going to become a leader. And I think it's a big problem, because we, as very young people, have to sometimes step up into these roles. So I want you to reflect a little bit on when you started to think about yourself as a leader, and then also to talk to the audience. We have an audience here we've got people in the support staff roles and in many roles. And what do you think people have to take on in their roles to be leaders? What is it how should we think of ourselves as leaders in our teams? Maybe Mashiko, start with you.
Yeah, I think that's such an important question, because we grow up being taught that some people are born leaders and others acquire it, whatever. Now, retrospectively, my understanding of leadership is that, in fact, every one of us is a leader. You might say some people have a better affinity towards it or more natural ability, whatever, but I really now believe that each and every one of us is a leader. Because, as she said, it is about context and space. It depends what situation you are finding yourself in, where there is an opportunity to step up. It might be different in another situation where you are the person that needs support. So I thought of myself as a leader probably when I became the chair of Gastro. And then now I do. But I actually realized that you could say that I had those leadership skills somewhere deep within me. Obviously, you have to hone them and grow them, and you can learn things and whatnot, and you have to be open to that. But yeah, my simple answer is that everyone is a leader. What it means is that you need to assess a particular situation. What are your special gifts, things that interest you, things that you're good at, that you can bring to the fore? And it doesn't require a title at all. In fact, you could have a title and do absolutely no leadership for the entire tenure. So it's not about that. It is about just being human, supporting people, bringing the best, giving of yourself, of the best that you have, because everybody has got something special to offer, whatever the situation might be. So that's my view.
Thanks, that's great. And you have something to add there?
So for me, like the true crystallization of who I am as a leader, I'm a slow learner. So it did happen in my 50s. I'm now like 55. And I applied for a leadership fellowship from the Gates Foundation, a Celeste Zuma African leadership. And we've had sort of 5 years of intense leadership exposure with a cohort of other fellows from Africa who do amazing work. And I've never really seen myself as, I've always seen myself as somebody who wants to be useful and do a good job. And I've seen myself as somebody who functions at a level for the job I want to have, not for the job I currently have. And if I see a problem, I want to fix it. And I think my secret sauce, and I didn't put like a nice cherry on it or have a fancy title until I came to Seri actually, was that I'm really good at motivating teams of people to come together to get the best out of them, and let each person shine in that special thing they're good at. And once you get that synergy in a team where you've got this amazing group of talented people, I don't mind taking the extra responsibility to coordinate it all. But that's what I kind of see leadership as coordinating a team of very talented people and giving each person the space to be the best that they can be. And that has worked, not under a glamorous title, to your point.
Yeah.
Berdoza?
Yeah, no, I think, thank you for that, for your comments. I think it took me a while to identify as a leader. It took a very long time before I could now really identify this as the, and I think it probably, I realized the response, with the leadership, with being a leader, there was a huge responsibility that goes with it. And I think it was at the time when I realized that the influence that I had over certain decisions that is taken, that really struck me. The positioning of, for you to be a leader, you are placed in a position that you are more responsible because it's affecting somebody's life. So any decision that you make around a particular individual or person or group of people, really, I needed to reflect on that very closely before I really made, because it had that effect, because being in a leadership, so I took it very seriously in terms of how I respond, the responsibility that was given to me, and the influence that I had in certain decisions. The other thing that I think for me that I've learned to grow or to understand being a leader was that it was not about me as the leader, that it was actually about the people in my team, and that I needed to really get to know each and every person in my team, and I still try and do that. What really makes that person tick? What really brings that person to work every day? So I try to the best of my ability to create an enabling space for people in my team to thrive, and for them to be the best versions of themselves. And I tell my team, and a few of my team members are sitting there, you must come to work and you must enjoy being at work. We must have fun. You must really not come to work and feel, oh my word, I'm coming to the department and whatever. But really, I try to create that space, Elmi. So when I do funny things, like I've got this Monday afternoon thing where we walk in the faculty, please be with me as part of my plan. So I think that's basically what
it put you on the spot. As a leader or as a team leader, you also sometimes have to make difficult decisions, and you also have to sometimes do unpopular things. So do you think it's possible to do that and to remain compassionate, and how do you handle that dichotomy?
I think that is something that it's not an easy. There are decisions that you have to make. The important thing for me has always been the issue around really clear communication, having the compassion. So the decisions that we make, it's the actual, when a decision is made that is not popular to the staff, the compassion comes in the action. So how do we now act on these decisions? So when you act on these decisions, you need to do it with kindness, do it with compassion, listen to what
you know, what people are saying, have an open discussion, you know. So for me, yes, it's not, there are decisions, but I think what has brought me kind of to where I am, it's a reflection, and it's really open communication, bringing people on board and doing it with kindness and with empathy.
Shiku, you must be making many difficult decisions because there's like lots of difficult things happening in Groote Schuur. What do you think about making difficult decisions?
No, we are definitely being challenged currently. I think when a leader makes a difficult decision, you make it based on the knowledge that you have, the information you have, the circumstances at the time, right? And I think maybe if you are making a decision that is honest and ethical, in that moment, to the best of your ability, I think that also takes care of how it might land.
Right. Yeah.
Obviously, there'll still be people who receive this decision who think it's unkind, it's unfair, etc., etc. Then you manage it. You manage it by engaging them, bring them in, try to explain the processes that you went through to make that decision. Sometimes also I find that the staff have an impression of a particular thing and they don't know what else you have to deal with, what else has to be taken into account. They're not privy to that information. So then if somebody is unhappy, that is opportunity, obviously without divulging confidential things and whatever, to try and explain how you came to make a particular decision. And if you allow them to express their disappointment and so forth, I think that also helps. But at the end of the day, in this situation, you will always make some decisions which make some people unhappy some of the time. So basically at any one point, someone is very unhappy with you. And I think for me, if I can genuinely say I made the best decision and I wasn't trying to punish anybody, I wasn't trying to be, a witch, I wasn't trying, etc., then I can live with the discomfort that for some people, some of the time, it affects them negatively.
But
That's
we
the
have
nature
to
of the
also
job.
admit that sometimes these decisions has an impact on our popularity and how people think about us. Joanne, do you have any thoughts?
So I've had a bit of a baptism of fire over the last year. I've moved institutions after being sort of like a little bit of a rock. I just stay. I'm stable. And I think I tend to avoid confrontation, like many people do. But I think when what you believe in your gut and your sort of moral fibre, comes into question, then you get a level of clarity on what needs to be done, even if it's not a popular thing that needs to be done. And my solution, because you have to make tough decisions sometimes to allow stuff to grow, is to communicate with your team along the way, be clear about your intentions and the thought process and the consultations you're having, hear where they're at, and then give people a lot of warning along the way. And I think the one thing sort of I was relatively slow to learn as well is that people grow from positive guidance and being told what they're doing well, but because some of us, are anti-confrontational, it's really hard to give constructive, negative feedback that is equally important for a team to grow. And if that's done with empathy and kindness and context, that's your responsibility as sort of a leader of a team, is to also direct people not just with positive advice, but also give them that negative advice, even if it's sometimes hard to hear. If you give it with kindness and context, then it's easier.
Yeah, it's very hard to say no, but unfortunately sometimes you have to, and that's, I think, the thing we're talking about. Now, I think we've talked about things that happened coincidentally, but I think there's also sometimes things that happen when you meet the right person. Like Joanne spoke about earlier, you meet the right mentor. And it's not always even a mentor. It can just be somebody who gives you practical approach to something, or somebody who just gives you sponsorship, or just somebody that connects with you on a level you've never had before. And I think those things are so important too. Do you have ideas around things that happened to you that were in that sort of context, and what did it mean to you? Let's start with you, Frudosa.
Yeah, I think so. When I became so I want to say up front that I think mentorship is very important. Mentorship programs within the faculty, being a mentor and being a mentee is also. I think it should be part of anybody's professional growth. Okay, to experience it from both angles. I was very fortunate in the way that I had. I had mentors, and I had mentors up and I had mentors down. Meaning, I had mentors that are the mentor up. It was people that were a level above me, maybe the dean, etc. But I listened to the mentors below me more than what I listened to the mentors above, because it was the younger people that was really mentoring me, that I really listened to, and I really enjoyed the input in terms of how they saw me as a leader. I think so. For me, I think that was important. The other thing is that I don't think you can do a leadership, being the journey that you're on. If you need to have that one person or people in your life that really that guides you through your process. So, for example, when there are difficult decisions that I need to make, I reflect on it, but it's almost like calling a friend. So I will pick up the phone and say, "Look, Almi, what do you think about this? Do you think we should do this?" So really identifying and really knowing that mentor has the best as you at heart, your interests at heart, and really would give you also very honest, advice, etc. So I think mentor for me, and this is the one thing that I really want to do in my department as well. Each and every staff member should have a mentor, and I think as you go through the ranks, coaching is also becoming very important. So when I became the acting dean at the time, which was also a mistake, by the way, I won't tell you about that story. When the acting dean in the faculty was that the first thing I requested from the university was, "Can you please, I need a coach. I've never been a dean and I need a coach." And that person was so amazing, because the coach brought out things that I didn't realize, things about myself that I was, issues around my self-confidence, my history, the way I grew up, where I've been, how I've been, our culture, all these things. And that person brought out things in my own, in my own psyche, in the way, that brought it to the fore, that I realized these are the things that I need to work on if I really want to succeed as being a leader of a faculty or in a department. Those are the things that made me aware. So coaching is very important, and I would really advise everybody to really go through, have a coach, and of course a mentor as well. If you have a mentor.
Mashiku, I think we both know what wonderful mentorship there was at Grooteskier at the time when we were younger there, with Bongani's Mayosi, who was the dean, I think, and also the head of department for you. I'm sure you have got some ideas around mentorship.
Yeah, I mean, I think traditional mentorship, whether it's formal programs or informal, mentorship, and as you say, I do agree with the bilateral gains from the relationship. It's not the mentor telling the mentee what or what not to do, and vice versa. You can learn so much from your mentees. So I think it's a critical aspect of development as a professional in the workplace, and definitely as a leader. And also the issue of coaching and sponsorship. I think those are really very important relationships. My own reflection on the mentors that I've had is I've also recognized that there were times when I didn't believe in myself. And their value was not so much in guiding me, like, do this, see this one, this is how this process works, do that, do that. It was just the knowledge that you had somebody who thought that even as you were failing, they think you're great. They think
So
you're
true.
awesome. And sometimes you need that, just that knowledge, that somebody else actually thinks you're capable and you've got potential and you can get this done. I think that is so important, especially when you lack that confidence yourself.
That's great. And I think, Joanne, you told us a story about coincidental mentorship. Do you have any other thoughts about that?
Oh my gosh, my whole career is like a series. I've got like so many people to say huge gratitude to along my journey, both younger and older than me. But I think like my lesson is being about just being really honest, like not show, if you want good mentorship, you've got to show up as who you are, warts and all, and the thing you're struggling with, rather than presenting as this sort of super polished version. And an example I would use was there's this really opinionated, amazing leader in his field in the US, Tom Hope, who's like an imaging absolute expert, and humble old me in 2010 went to a meeting with him, and we were just like developing our imaging skill set, and I was seeing something that just didn't make sense to me, and kind of instead of going to Tom and trying to impress him by how fancy we were, I said to him, like, look at these images, they just don't make sense, and I'm like, it just doesn't sit right with me. And his thing was that to actually have somebody that was brave enough to come to somebody of that standing and present a problem we were having in an honest way, and not just trying to sort of smooth it over and make out as though I was really, I knew, had all the answers, made him feel that I was worth like the advice, and he's been like one of the sort of loveliest collaborators I've ever had, and that took like a level of bravery to kind of show myself warts and all, and that's kind of been a recurring theme. I think that was the first time I really kind of dug deep and showed warts and all, but that has been like, people are very receptive to that when they know they can be of use to you, and you're not trying to kind of gloss over all the details, but you're being authentic in sort of what you're seeing.
That's great. So I'm going to ask you a last question about looking forward at the end, but I'm going to ask Viv to join us and just give a few questions to the audience. Are we just going to do it by show of hands? Yeah. So we've got a few mics, and I think it would be nice if we get some maybe real life questions or other things that you want to ask our panelists or to Viv. That might be interesting things that we haven't thought about. There's a question over there, Wilma.
Hi. So, as a young woman who's just starting out in the career field, in the science field, you can often find yourself in rooms that are surrounded by people who are much more experienced, much more established and more confident than what I am. And you've obviously, you've touched on this about looking at mentees and mentoring and leadership, but have you ever experienced imposter syndrome at different stages in your career, and how did you learn to trust your own knowledge and recognize that you deserve to have your voice heard, or you deserve to be in that room, just as someone who's recently graduated?
That's a great question. I don't know who to ask to answer it, but maybe I'm going to ask Viv to answer that, and then I'll give one of the scientific people an answer too.
Okay, so I'm going to answer this from my position, not as a motivational speaker, right? But as a dismotivational speaker. So when people say to me, listen, I have imposter syndrome, I say, don't speak about yourself like that.
Yeah.
It's worse than that. You're just average. You just lack the vocabulary to express it clearly. So I'm saying to you, stop asking if you're good enough. Stop asking if you're an imposter. You're average, like everyone else. Average is enough. Show up. Show up as you are. As you are. Does that answer your question from my perspective?
Yeah. Perfect. Joanne?
So, I appreciate that question, because I think we all, no matter what stage of our lives, have an imposter syndrome. And I had a recent conversation with one of the smartest people that I'm currently mentoring, and it was exactly around this issue. And like a quote comes to mind: be brave enough to try something new, because like if you are in this mindset that you need to know everything, you're going to be sorely disappointed, because you basically spend your whole career finding out how little you know about anything. And I think most people in the field are like that. So just be brave enough to show up, but also be brave enough to not have all the answers, but to ask the questions. That was like the one piece of valuable advice. And yeah, I'll leave it there. But that's it is common. And the other thing is that we're like, I think you get to a certain point in your career, like PhD or whatever level you've got to, and you kind of have always been competing. At school, we compete for marks against one another, but it's actually, we're not racing against other people. It's kind of the system set up to do that, but actually within you as a person, it's your growth that matters, and where your starting point is and where you want to get. It's not about actually everyone else. So like just having that realization that you're not actually competing against anyone else. You're on this journey that matters to you, and it's your responsibility to get yourself to the best point for you. Then it changes how you engage with the room around you.
No. That's a great answer, thank you. Let's see if there are more questions. Florence.
Thank you so much to all of you. It's really, really insightful. I also don't know who to direct this question to, but so we've spoken a lot about leadership and taking photos, even in your down moments, etc., etc. What do you do when you're not a leader? What are you doing at home? What are you doing? What are you doing to kind of edify yourself outside of the workplace? That's something that I completed a PhD last year, and I've sort of been mulling the past 8 months. What am I meant to be doing with my free time? It's just a question, but it kind of helps us inform who you are as a whole person.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a critical question, because our jobs become our identity, which is so not what should be happening at all. Because this is not only who I am, there's so much else. I'm a daughter, I'm a da-da-da-da. And I think one has to recognize that. And one actually has to recognize that in order to do these jobs that we do as well as we do, or as well as we try to do, we actually have to fortify the other areas of our lives. And nothing gives you more that than your relationships with your family, with your friends, with your community, with whatever.
Yeah.
And if you don't spend time getting from that relationship what you need to be a better person, whatever, you're actually not going to do your job so well. So it's important to rest. Sleep, eat well, exercise, pray, meditate, whatever it is that you need to do. Visit the old lady down the street. Spend time. What's the word I want? Volunteer. Kitchen soup, whatever. You have to do that stuff, because I believe that spiritually, it really strengthens you to actually face the world. So what I do is that, I try to get enough sleep, I try to exercise, I try to move. Sometimes I watch TV just to de-stress. But I'm aware of the importance of the relationships and having time for that phone call, that message, reaching out, etc. And I can see the benefits thereof.
Maybe one more for Doza.
Yeah, so you really can't lead from an empty cup. You really need to have all those things in place. And we talk about life-work integration and not like life-work balance any longer, because really your life is, you can't separate the two. Because when you're at work, you think of what's going on. I think, oh my gosh, what am I going to cook tonight when I get home, or that type of thing. So really we talk about life. And I think, I totally agree with you, is that you need, as leaders, we really need to take care of ourselves. And as women as well, we don't often take care of ourselves. We don't often, we always think of the family, we think of our husbands, we think of our children, we think of our fathers, our parents, so we don't really, and I think taking care of yourself is really, it's really strengthening you to become the best version of yourself when you're in the workplace. Because, you feel good, you have energy. Going up the mountain, I love hiking, I love the mountains. These are the things that we sometimes take for granted. And we really need to focus a lot, focus on yourself, and be, kind of bring it together. For Doza is that holistic person. She's fun, but she's also strict. She's a mother, but she's also a leader. So she's kind of bring it together and find that balance. And I think that's just what I want to kind of advise you.
And this world rewards busyness, or the appearance of being busy, because then you're really working hard. Don't buy into that.
Doesn't work. You're right.
Thanks very much. So my question is distressed to everyone. So while going through your career, what did you say yes to every opportunity that came your way? I think I've also heard things recently about you need to say yes, at times you also need to say no. But then some of this yes leads you to the next opportunity. So I'm sort of like, as an oncoming scientist, we have to supervise students, you need to write publications, you need to write grants. There's like so much, a lot to do at a time. But then we also need to say yes to other opportunities. So how do we sort of like, how do you balance that?
So maybe ask first the actress whether, did you say yes to every role that came your way?
Just a correction, I'm not a trained actress. That's why I was so unusual on TV, because I was the only one, I was just a normal person. And I don't know how to answer that. There was a famous United States Army general who was always complimented on how decisive he was. And people couldn't understand how this guy could be so decisive. And he said, it's simple, 50% of the time I say yes, 50% of the time I say no. It doesn't make a difference. So I can't say that I said yes, but I can say that the way you say yes and no will be important to you. So the times that you say yes and no, if you say no because you are afraid, and in this context, if you say no because you are afraid to compete with a man, get over it. All of us have a pocket full of Zap signs, and you've got to use them, because if you don't, they will burn a hole in your soul. So I'm speaking more to be careful of why you say no.
That's a very good perspective. Maybe Joanne, if you can give a comment also from your side.
So I don't have the answers, because I tend to be a yes person and I overcommit, and then I'm kind of like, why am I doing this? And why am I like at 120%? So I don't have the answers. I am a firm believer in, if an opportunity exists and it fits your agenda and it's in line with what you want to get, you should say yes, because you never know where it could lead.
Next question.
So we all are different people. So my question is to anybody who wants to answer. As a leader, how do you respectfully address another leader who struggles with decision making or taking ownership without offending or undermining them to still take your team forward?
Oh, this is a tricky one.
Take them for a cup.
I'll give this one to Ferdoza.
Oh my word, I take them for a cup of coffee. So it's a tricky one. I think, you know, and we do see that. It's a real question. It's a real issue in the workplace. I think it's and it boils down to that relationship that we have within. So leaders in this faculty are people that are quite closely connected. So we see each other at executive meetings, we see each other at bosparads, we get to know each other, we build relationships with each other. For me, the important thing is that I would not easily take you out. I will not easily, be confrontational if I don't really understand you, and if I really don't have a good relationship with you. But I do think that it will be a disfavor on you if I'm not really honest and open about your leadership. So I would ask you, because that for me is actually kindness. Because you're actually being kind to that person by actually saying, let's talk about this, and take them out of this, and showing and having that relation. But I also need to, I would really first of all get a sense it must be here. I must have a good feeling that this is that I'm not going to end up where we're actually going to leave this coffee date and we're going to be so angry at each other that we don't want to talk to each other again. So I think for me it is about really the balance of really getting to, before you getting to know, kind of be confident that, this person will actually listen to me, kind of be open to my advice and suggestions, and really make it more in a way that, look, let's learn from this, because I will approach it, I've also had that type of, it was hard for me to make decisions, but these are the things that I have done to make those decisions easier. For example, I would never make a decision somewhere like that. That's not the way. I sleep on those decisions, and I call a friend. I call my mentor, and I will ask that person, you know what, do you think this thing? And then I'll make a decision. So those are the type of things. It's not an easy question, though. I must admit, it's very difficult.
I make a decision much quicker because I come from a surgical background, and that's my nature to just decide and then to sort out the bleeding afterwards. So I think it's very different for different people, how I would advise. How would you do it in a non-hierarchical system, Viv?
So my exposure comes from my little universe. I was a TV director in the advertising industry, which is basically a military operation. So decisions are the top of the food chain, and I ran it like I was a general in the army. This is the plan, this is the script, you do that or you're fired, left, right, center, dagate. But when I became a manager or the creative director of an ad agency, then you start to see people differently. You see things that have to be grown to deliver long-term yields. So there's definitely different situations, but the type of tact and dignity these ladies are displaying, that's not my speciality.
I think we have time for one or two more questions from the audience.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yes, there's one there.
Thank you. I think this question is for Viv, but any other ladies can answer as well. So you mentioned that you need to show up and you must show up as you are. Do you maybe have any advice that you can give to the ladies in terms of when you really want to show up, but you are struggling to show up? There are things that pull you back, things probably maybe it might be confidence or you are afraid of being judged, but you really want to show up and you want to show up as you are. Do you have any advice that you can give ladies in terms of how do you then maneuver that space and still show up?
So show up as you are, and it's very complicated. I mean, the word authenticity, it sounds so clear and everybody knows, but it is very difficult. You just have to start practicing, and sometimes you show up completely defeated and depressed. But then that's the way you show up. I'm at the moment in a place of complete overwhelm in life. That the only way I can cope is literally going to the bed with my dog Bonky. And I have to do that a few times a day. But so I'm showing up from the bed. Literally, I'm going to sit there, I can't, I'm overwhelmed now. But before I get up from this bed, I'm going to make a plan on writing one thing. And if you show up completely flat, then you still show up. But you cannot wait for that better version of you to show up before you show up. So that's the only advice I give. And if you say I'm weak now, then you show up weak. But please don't wait for a better version of yourself to be present before you show up. I hope that helps. And sometimes these movements are so small. And if you go, okay, today I'm showing up, I'm not even average, then you show up below average. But you still got to show up.
That's a great answer. Can I add? Yes.
No, I just wanted to add to that because I think there's something quite powerful. So an individual showing up and having the bravery is one thing, but like being a woman in the world, like that sisterhood or being in a space where there are people around you, you can help people show up by encouraging them, like giving them strength through quiet, I don't know, like it's just, you can hold the space that makes it safe for people to show up. And the more they show up in a safer space that you can help create, the braver and the more used to showing up they will be. So that was just my advice about like a sisterhood or a personhood in a room that you are in, that you can create that space.
Yeah, if I just want to add to it, I think, sometimes we think that as when you look at your leader, you think, that person, she's fine, she's okay, but there were moments, if I can just, from my own experience, there were moments that I was really down and really feel, overwhelmed. And these are real, even for leaders, for women. But I think something had brought me through. I would get up in the morning and put that lipstick on. and I really look at myself in the mirror and said to myself, Fidoza, today, whatever's going to happen, just show up at work and put that, that lipstick that made me feel good. Something that made you feel good, that made me feel good, was that makeup, and really feel good. And I think that's
very true. I've had somebody who told me the same thing once, and she said to me, put on your lipstick and go and do it.
Yes.
And it is like...
It does make a big difference.
Make it work. Mashiko, any thoughts from you on this?
Yeah, I think in addition, also for me, showing up means you recognize that discomfort in that moment and you acknowledge it to yourself. That's growth. So you might not be smiling or happy or whatever, but you say, oh, today I'm walking to this thing, I'm not feeling myself. I recognize what that feels like. So don't run away from the discomfort of the feeling. Face it. Show up, go to the meeting. You might not be happy, you might not be conversationalist, whatever, but you're there. That's fine, because it's going to be baby steps, and sometimes you'll do better than at other times. And I think the thing is just to recognize what that feeling is telling you, and then obviously the next step is to try to figure out, well, how do you then deal with it? Because actually that might be the most important aspect of it, how you respond to the negative feeling. But don't deny it or discount it.
Fides?
I'm so glad that we are over this thing that we are competing with men. I think that time has passed. But how do we manage it in a university and in a work setting where there are so many strong women that this almost stiletto jealousy, and if you show up and being yourself, that you don't offend people and that they don't see it as you want to compete with them. How do you balance that?
So a bit of the competitive nature between women that we're talking about. Mashiko, do you realize that this is the case, and have thoughts on this?
My view is very different, because somebody mentioned it about your own path and basically not competing with anybody, man, female, animal, whatever. And I think if other people are competing with you, I don't even think there's a way that you know that yourself, because I think you are dealing with what you want to do, what you want to achieve, and that's all you can do, and in fact that's probably all you can know. You wouldn't necessarily know that some other person is competing with you. So let's say you have an interaction with somebody else who's not being collaborative or whatever, and it might appear as though they're competing. The point is that there might be other reasons why they're behaving that way. That it doesn't necessarily mean that they are competing. So for me, it brings it back to the same point about what you think about what you are doing. Where do you want to go and how do you get there? If you have people that are supportive, that's fantastic. If you have people that are not supportive, that's also fine. Maybe there are reasons why they are not supportive, but that's not your reason. Do you get me? Yeah.
I'm mostly talking about where HOD, for example, wouldn't support female in the team because the person see it as a threat to support that people to be promoted or whatever. How do you manage that relationship there?
Then I think it's an HR maybe process, or that's where you could have the support of another senior person within the same division or department, or then the next level up. So if it's a head of department and it's a process that you're applying for and you are eligible, then you could have the opportunity to go to the dean or the next person and say, I'm applying for this, I think I'm eligible, let's have the documentation, let's have a look objectively, and then that could be managed that way. So I think that's what I would do.
Yeah, if we focus on competition in the workplace, I'll ask Viv to also make a comment, as her story also had a lot of competition. In it.
So just in general, humans, like other large pack mammals, male or female, have hierarchies, and you're not going to get past that. You will compete with a woman differently to a man, but you're never going to get away from that if you want to be at the head of the team. So sometimes you're going to win, sometimes you're going to lose. Mostly you're going to lose. Learn how to cope with that.
Yep, that's good advice too. Okay, so I'm going to ask a few forward-looking. Oh, you've got another
No,
point.
I just
Yes,
wanted
too.
to end maybe a little bit more neutrally than something. I listen to a lot of podcasts, and the one podcast I was listening to just last night was exactly this guy. It was actually a guy in this organization, keep wanting to be in a C-suite, American podcast, and he didn't get the job, and he was like self-introspecting and how he can make himself better, and that, like after 45 minutes, it like intense, because like he was a black male in the US, so there's kind of like, is this like a racism, what like he didn't know where to go, and he felt he deserved that position, and sort of after a long, like, how can I be better, how can I get this and this person, and the end result was that he actually is in the wrong environment, and he needs to step out. He is phenomenal, but he's been held into this environment that he's got no control over. It exists. So you can either try and make yourself the most competitive in that environment, or in his case, the advice was, actually, you've got so much to offer, go out of that environment and do what you do. So sometimes it's difficult, sometimes it's not a good fit.
That's a very good take on this too. So yeah, we're going to ask. I'm going to ask you all something about the future. So Mashiku, we have got a mixed audience here. Some younger people, some older people. If you have to give advice to your younger self, what would be a short advice you would give yourself?
Don't sweat the small stuff. Yeah, in terms of leadership, she said it, it's not about you, it's not personal. Deal with the issues, not the personalities and the identities. And everything works out. Yes. You said you wanted short and sweet.
Yeah, I wanted short and sweet.
Yeah.
Viv, on your authenticity, what advice do you give people in the audience to be authentic? How do you think they should do it?
So get rid of the concept of chasing happiness, meaning and purpose. And I know these things sound important, but try and make them not as important. Success, excellence, happiness. Rather go for cultivate curiosity, authenticity, and a sense of humor. Because with those three things, you can manage anything else.
Yes.
That's great advice. Joanne, you're working in the South African landscape, you're working in this faculty, and you're working in health leadership. What do you think are the changes that we still have to make today?
I'm sort of a very much a glass half full person. So I do see what I'd like to be happening, but I'm very excited about the innovation, entrepreneurship space, about creating, your own path. I would sort of continue to like mentoring women in science. I think it's really important, and you mentor individuals individually. So I'm a newbie in Stellenbosch and at Tygerberg. I've liked what I've seen so far. I'm very inspired by what I see coming and the thinking. And for me, I just want to figure out how I can contribute most to that, rather than I don't have my list of things I find problematic at this point.
And then maybe for those, we live in a world that things are changing so much, and we're dealing with so much change. How do you cope with the worry that comes with this?
Yeah, I think I worry about it all the time, Elmi. I think especially in higher education, when the landscape changes all the time. If it's not AI, then it's global pandemics, etc., etc. So these things change all the time, and it's worrisome. I do think that for me, having said that, I do also think that there are great opportunities, and that especially when it comes to, and especially within this faculty, also being kind of new to it, that I do think that we need to focus on, for example, on our women in terms of looking specifically around their leadership and their development as women academics or women women within the faculties, not only academics, colleagues, but also we've got a very big, strong administrative support staff with whatever you call out, but generally just women in the faculty. That we really need to look at, for example, their role in their own leadership development. I think the important thing is, and I always worry about the succession or the pipeline. How do we focus? We need to start focusing on really developing those leadership skills. For example, it's important who we, for example, put forward. If people ask, for example, there's a leadership program, the names we put forward, the fact that, also looking at women, but also the women whose voices are important, because all women in the faculty doesn't have the same. So when we talk about parity, these are the things that we must be sensitive to, that all women don't experience the same things, because we come from diverse backgrounds. So, for example, the voices of the most marginalized women are very important when we think about these things in our faculty. So, because their voices are important. And the opportunities, so some people have, for example, very good social networks. Other women might not have those networks, those social networks that some other women have. So I think for me always, which is always uppermost in my mind, is I think about equity. I do think about these things very deeply when we look at higher education in particular, and in terms of the next leadership, the next generation of leaders in our faculty. So I just think in terms of those things are for me important.
So I really want to thank you all firstly for being here, and secondly for actively participating in the questions. I think it gave us at least a lot to think about. And I want to also thank Florence and her team for putting this event together. It is just a pleasure to work with the marketing team in our faculty. You say we would like to have this event, and it just happens. I want to really say thank you to you. We have a small gift for each of the speakers, but let's give the marketing team quickly a hand of applause. And then we would like to just thank you all for
Thank you, my
being here.
darling.
Didn't even look at my little notes that I made.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
So I hope you'll be able to join us for a little bit of a social. We've got a few snacks outside, so please don't leave immediately. I think we stopped 10 minutes before 2 so that you can still do a little bit of a social interaction if you have a meeting starting at 2. And thank you for your presence. It was wonderful to have you here.